2015, what should have been an ordinary Google Maps image of a peaceful dock in Almere, Netherlands, instead became the epicenter of worldwide speculation, mystery, and intrigue. A seemingly tranquil aerial view of a lakeside pier took on an ominous tone when a Google Maps user noticed something deeply unsettling. What appeared to be a long, dark red streak running across the wooden planks of the dock, leading directly to what looked like a lifeless body lying at the water's edge. The eerie image rapidly went viral, triggering a wave of conspiracy theories, amateur investigations, and a global debate about what had truly been captured from above. Social media platforms exploded with discussions and theories. Many were convinced that Google Maps had inadvertently recorded the aftermath of a violent crime. Some speculated that the dock had been the site of a brutal attack, with the blood trail suggesting that someone had been dragged across the planks before being discarded near the water. Others believed that a body had been dumped in a secluded location, escaping notice until technology revealed its grim secret. True crime enthusiasts, conspiracy theorists, and online detectives meticulously examined the image, sharing zoomed-in screenshots and attempting to decode the macabre scene. The internet was alive with speculation. Was this an unsolved murder? Had Google Maps just exposed a hidden crime? The mystery deepened as the image spread across forums and news outlets. Many found it difficult to believe that such a horrifying event could have taken place in a quiet residential neighborhood without raising alarms. Local residents were just as shocked when they saw the image. Some even recalled vague memories of police activity near the dock in previous years, further fueling theories that the image could be linked to a cold case. Others, however, dismissed the claims outright, finding it hard to believe that such a brutal crime could have gone unnoticed in their peaceful community. As the online frenzy grew, local law enforcement took notice. Given the international attention the image was receiving, authorities felt compelled to investigate. Officers visited the dock, prepared to unearth a long-buried truth. If the speculation was correct, they could be standing on the site of an unsolved crime. However, upon closer examination, the chilling mystery quickly unraveled, revealing a far less sinister reality. The so-called body at the end of the dock was not a human corpse, but rather a large dog that had been lying down after an energetic swim in the lake. The blood trail that had captured the world's imagination was nothing more than water that had darkened the wooden planks as the dog trotted across the dock after emerging from the lake. The sunlight reflecting off the damp wood, coupled with the angle of the satellite image, had created an eerie optical illusion that made the scene appear far more macabre than it actually was. While the revelation put an end to the murder theories, it did not diminish the fascination surrounding the image. Even after the truth was revealed, people continued to discuss how easily the human mind could be tricked by visual cues and perspective. The incident became a prime example of how our imaginations fill in the gaps when we are presented with ambiguous information. In this case, what started as a harmless moment of a dog playing in the water had been transformed into an international mystery simply due to perspective, lighting, and human interpretation. Church of St. George stood as the heart of the small village for centuries. Built in the 14th century, its towering steeple and sturdy stone walls had weathered the passage of time, bearing witness to generations of faithful worshippers. It was more than just a place of worship. It was the foundation of the community. Within its walls, villagers gathered for Sunday masses, celebrated weddings filled with joy and laughter, and mourned their dead in solemn funeral services. The church bells rang through the village square, marking both the passage of time and the rhythms of life and death. Legends of miracles were whispered among the elders. Some claimed the church had once been visited by a wandering saint who left behind a relic, a wooden cross said to hold divine power. Others spoke of visions seen in candlelight, of spirits of the long-departed lingering in prayer. For centuries, the Church of St. George was the village's most sacred space. But in 1968, everything changed. It was a somber afternoon, one of mourning and reflection. The villagers had gathered for the funeral of an elderly farmer, a man who had lived in the village his entire life. Friends and family filled the wooden pews, heads bowed, as the priest recited prayers for the departed. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows along the stone walls, and the scent of incense drifted through the air. Then, without warning, a low groan rumbled through the church. It began as a subtle tremor, a shift in the structure that no one noticed at first, but within seconds the sound grew. Stone creaking, wooden beams snapping. Before anyone could react, a large portion of the ceiling gave way. A deafening crash shook the ground as centuries-old dust and debris came raining down upon the terrified mourners. Screams filled the air as people scrambled to escape, shielding themselves from the falling rubble. Miraculously, no one was killed, but the event left a deep scar on the villagers' hearts. Some were injured, their bodies covered in dust and small wounds from shattered stone. Others clutched each other, whispering prayers as they looked up at the gaping hole in the ceiling through which the gray sky loomed. The church had always been a place of safety, a shelter under God's watchful eye. Until that day, many believed it was a sign, an omen of doom. Some whispered that the spirits of the forgotten dead were restless, angered by something unseen. Others recalled old superstitions, that the land upon which the church stood was cursed long before its foundation had been laid. A few villagers even insisted that they had seen shadowy figures moving in the church late at night in the weeks leading up to the incident, their forms barely visible against the candlelit walls. Fear took root. The priest tried to assure the villagers that it was merely an accident, a consequence of aging architecture and years of neglect, but no one listened. The church was abandoned overnight, left to crumble as the people refused to return. Services were moved to a temporary chapel in the village square, but even there, the fear lingered. Some villagers moved away entirely, believing the entire area was cursed. Years passed, and the Church of St. George fell further into ruin. The roof continued to collapse, and rain poured in through the broken ceiling, washing away remnants of its former sanctity. Vandals stripped the interior of its valuables. Candlesticks, wooden pews, and even the altar were stolen or broken. The sacred relic that had once been a source of village pride disappeared, lost to time, or taken by those who dared to enter. Nature, as if claiming what was rightfully hers, began to creep in. Vines crawled up the stone walls, and moss covered the once polished floors. Birds nested in the rafters, and wild animals wandered through the broken doors. The graveyard beside the church, once neatly maintained, became overgrown with weeds, the headstone slowly sinking into the earth. Despite its decay, the church did not lose its haunting presence. Travelers passing through the area reported hearing strange echoes, whispers that seemed to come from the empty pews, the distant tolling of bells that no longer hung in the steeple. Some claimed to have seen figures standing at the church's entrance, disappearing into the darkness when approached. In 2009, the murder of 14-year-old Kevin Barrera sent shockwaves through Richmond, California. His body was found near train tracks, the victim of a violent crime that left his family and community devastated. But years later, an unexpected and deeply unsettling discovery added another layer of pain to their grief. Google Maps had unknowingly captured the crime scene in its satellite imagery. It wasn't until 2014 that a Google Maps user stumbled upon the disturbing image. The aerial view showed police cars and investigators gathered at the location where Kevin's body had been found, preserving a moment of tragedy in a way no one had anticipated. For Kevin's father, Jose Barrera, the discovery was heartbreaking. Seeing the scene of his son's murder displayed online for the world to see was an unimaginable violation of privacy. In response to the backlash, Google took swift action. The company issued a formal apology to the Barrera family and removed the image from its platform. Google also acknowledged the need for better safeguards to prevent similar incidents in the future, recognizing the emotional harm that such digital exposure could cause. While the image's removal brought some relief, the damage had already been done. The ordeal underscored a larger issue. In an age where technology captures everything, the boundary between public information and personal tragedy is increasingly blurred. Kevin's murder became more than just a crime. It became a case study in how modern technology can inadvertently magnify human suffering. In 2025, a series of unsettling images from an empty lot in Los Angeles surfaced on Google Earth, capturing public attention and igniting widespread speculation. The satellite images revealed words like help, LAPD, federal, and Traffico spelled out using debris, leading many to fear that the site was linked to human trafficking or other nefarious activities. The lot, located approximately a mile east of Los Angeles City Hall, became a focal point for online discussions. Social media platforms buzzed with theories, with users expressing alarm over the implications of the messages. One user commented, "A vacant lot near an overseas container facility. Human trafficking is a real possibility here." While another noted, "This is really one of the creepiest things I've seen in a long time." The intrigue deepened when members of the FaZe Clan, a group of Los Angeles-based gamers, decided to investigate the site firsthand. During a live stream on January 26, 2025, streamers Ranny Nets, Nick Fosco, and Jason Wynn visited the location. Their exploration took a dramatic turn when they were confronted by an individual who warned them to leave, followed by an encounter with a pack of dogs that chased them off the property. This incident further fueled online speculation and concern. In response to the growing alarm, both the Union Pacific Railroad, which owns the property, and the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, provided clarifications. A spokesperson for the Union Pacific Railroad stated, "Photos circulating on Google Maps that no one was or is in danger." They explained that a known individual had trespassed on the property to create these messages, and emphasized that it is both illegal and unsafe to trespass on Union Pacific. The LAPD corroborated this account, noting that they were familiar with the individual responsible. Authorities confirmed that the individual had been creating similar messages on nearby properties for several years. Despite these assurances, the incident highlighted the power of satellite imagery in social media in shaping public perception. The rapid spread of the images and ensuing theories underscored how quickly information can circulate and the challenges authorities face in addressing public concerns. On the afternoon of November 2, 2020, 83-year-old Pet Landry X vanished from her home in Anden, Belgium, under mysterious circumstances. At the time, her husband was outside, hanging laundry in the garden, unaware that she had wandered off. Hours later, he noticed her absence, and by evening her family had reported her missing, launching an extensive police search. Pet suffered from Alzheimer's disease, which had caused her to frequently leave the house at random hours without informing her husband. In the years leading up to her disappearance, she often knocked on neighbors' doors without reason and, heartbreakingly, no longer recognized her children or even her husband. Usually when she wandered off, she was found only a short distance from home, but this time was different. She was nowhere to be found. Authorities mobilized 50 police officers, search and rescue dogs, thermal imaging helicopters, and drones in a desperate effort to locate her. Despite these extensive resources, no sign of Pet emerged. Days turned into weeks, and with no clues, the search was eventually called off. Her family, left with no answers, assumed the worst, that she had stumbled into the nearby Meuse River and drowned. For nearly 2 years, Pet's fate remained a mystery. Then, in October 2022, as police were preparing to close the case for good, an investigator made an astonishing discovery. While reviewing Google Street View images of Pet's neighborhood, he stumbled upon something chilling. An image of Pet captured by the passing Google car, walking away from her home and toward a neighbor's property. The case was immediately reopened. In July 2011, 2 armed individuals broke into an unoccupied house in a quiet suburb of Oklahoma City. With a home full of valuables and no one to stop them, they began looting. However, their crime spree was cut short when the homeowner unexpectedly returned, walking in on the burglars mid-theft. Instead of fleeing with the stolen goods, the intruders held the woman at gunpoint as they continued to ransack her home. For over an hour, she endured the terrifying ordeal, fearing for her life and convinced they would shoot her before leaving. Fortunately, after what felt like an eternity, the robbers left without physically harming her. Traumatized, the woman chose to remain anonymous, worried that the criminals might retaliate if they discovered she had spoken out. She reported the incident to the police, but with no witnesses and little evidence, the case soon went cold. Over time, she lost hope that the culprits would ever be identified or brought to justice. 3 years later, however, a surprising twist reignited the case. In July 2014, the woman's neighbor happened to be browsing Google Maps Street View when something caught her eye: an image of 2 men walking casually down the street. The figures perfectly matched the description the victim had given of her attackers. Excited by the discovery, the neighbor immediately texted the woman, who confirmed that the men captured in the image were indeed the same ones who had robbed her. The timing of the image suggested it had been taken just minutes before the crime occurred. Unfortunately, the faces of the suspects were blurred due to Google's privacy policies and the grainy quality of the image. Despite the setback, the photograph provided a crucial lead for law enforcement. Though the police have yet to track down the criminals, the discovery gave them a valuable clue, significantly improving their chances of eventually bringing the perpetrators to justice, all thanks to an unexpected source: Google Maps. One night in October 2006, 72-year-old David Lee Niles met a friend at Jake's Bar in Byron Township, Michigan. This was a familiar place for him, where he often spent hours socializing. However, that evening was different. Earlier that year, David had been diagnosed with cancer. After a brief conversation, he left abruptly, saying the pain was too much to bear. That was the last time anyone saw him. When his family couldn't reach him, they reported him missing, launching a statewide search. Despite their efforts, no clues emerged. As years passed, hope faded. In 2011, after 5 years with no leads, his family published an obituary. David Lee Niles, age 72, of Wyoming, passed away, and only God knows the time and place. For nearly a decade, the case remained unsolved. until a shocking discovery in November 2015. Brian Houseman, an employee of the Cook Funeral Home in Byron County, was decorating the company Christmas tree when he noticed something unusual in a nearby pond. From the top of the tree, he spotted what looked like a submerged car. Houseman immediately contacted the police, who used Google Maps to confirm the sighting from an aerial view. A dive team was dispatched, and soon after, they located the sunken vehicle. Later that morning, a recovery crew pulled the car from the water. Inside, authorities found skeletal remains and a wallet belonging to David Lee Niles. Though his family finally found closure, many questions remain. Before his cancer diagnosis, David had struggled with severe depression. Given his deteriorating health and emotional state, some speculate he may have taken his own life. However, the true circumstances surrounding his disappearance will likely remain unknown forever.